Is happiness just an illusion, or is there something we can actually do about it? Today on the David Rutherford Show. Hello, friends. I am extremely fired up about this episode because, as usual, on my journey on the road this week, I have had a considerable amount of time to contemplate why America is so bummed out right now. And if you spend as much time as I do on X, on Substack, on Instagram, on YouTube, as a result of me trying to be aware of what the mentality or the consciousness of our society, where it's at, it's pretty apparent that right now people are pretty bummed out. Now, before we get into this, I just want to say thank you so much for all your support. You've been incredible. We love the overwhelming outreach and support we're getting all over the place. Please like, subscribe, and share the show. It makes huge impact for us in the algorithm. And the algorithm is finally starting to pick us up. There's one clip that we have on Instagram that's gone over 400,000 views. That's because you all are sharing it, you're commenting on it, you're liking it. If you could do that for us on all the different platforms, YouTube, X, all the places that we're offering our content and the show. On X, the show is at D Rutherford Show. On Instagram, it's at David Rutherford Show. On YouTube, it's the David Rutherford Show. Or you can follow me at Team Frog Logic on everything. Jordy, we still got to get my YouTube channel back up and going, don't we? We got to figure that one out. If you know anybody at YouTube or anything, have them reach out and help us, because for the life of me, I cannot find the credentials that allow me to get back into my YouTube channel after they throttled me back in 2020. But
this is your personal YouTube. The show YouTube is up and running. It's going, but yours is in jail.
But mine's in jail still, I think. I don't know. Maybe they just... What they'll say is, you've lost your password. And I was like, oh my God, give me a break. Anyways, we really appreciate it. If you want to sign up for the newsletter and get our weekly newsletter that has all different kinds of things in it, go to davidrutherford.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. We've got a pretty robust group coming. We're going to start putting some more articles in there. Also, if you're interested in any of the motivational topics or ideas that I've been teaching for the last 30 years, the ones that I share around the country for all the various organizations that I speak with, most particularly the asset management firm that I work with, go check those out, because I teach 3 different courses. You can get them online for $200 each. One is learning to embrace your fears. The second is learning to forge your self-confidence. And the third is learning to live a team life. Those courses are available. They're fantastic. They're journal-based as well as some activity. But we just think they would make a huge impact for you. Also, sign up for my new upcoming fictional book called The Poet Warrior, or go to our merchandise page on davidrutherford.com, and I have a self-help book about self-confidence, and then I sell 2 kids' book. One, which is a fitness book with my cartoon character, Doc Frog. The other is a anti-bully operation book with Doc and 4 of his buddies that create up the anti-bully brigade. Okay, that's all I got to say about that. The pursuit of happiness. As I said before, when I'm in the airport, I'm always sitting there kind of contemplating what my next show is going to be. And early this week, when I took off early in the morning on Tuesday to head out to Salt Lake City, I just noticed not a malaise, but there's a heaviness across society right now. There's a heaviness in every aspect. I hear the heaviness in my children, right? My 4 daughters, all teenage girls. So I hear it out of high schools. I hear it in friends and peers and people I know. Obviously, we see it on the internet in multiple different capacities at every different age group. Most especially, I think this has been punctuated by Charlie Kirk's assassination. But this is not just the beginning of this cultural war that's been taking place for, I mean, you can argue it's always underpinned to society. There's always some type of ambitious ideology or pathocracy that EM talked about that's trying to wage war against the other intrinsic structures of society, right? These hierarchical pillars that separate different groups within the overall group itself, right? And I think, there's an idea that's constant is I think people are saying to themselves, when are we going to have some relief? When are we going to have that moment where you can wake up and you can go PT out in your garage or go to the gym early, get back, feed your kids or feed yourself, and then go to work. And on the way to work, you're just listening to something that's making you laugh. There's no heaviness into work, and work is doing great. The economy's cranking, so your job is viable. Your organization you work for is increasing and generating more revenue, right? And there's, the world itself seems to be in a stable position. Man, that's what I think. There's this underlying desire that people are looking for right now. They want some semblance of order, or maybe not. It's not order per se as much as it is that, we're not on the precipice of some catastrophic civil war, World War III, financial collapse, whatever it might be. We can have a place or a space in time, which most people say, from 1992 to 2000, that time where we kind of can exhale and just focus on the betterment of ourselves and our communities and our families and our friends. And we don't have this impending weight of destruction that surrounds us. And, there's a group of people out there that always seem to, I don't know if it's challenge me as much it is amaze me. And these are the people that are like, I don't watch the news at all. And I'm not on social media. I don't watch the news. And you know what? I'm better for it. I live a more blissful life. I don't have this impending doom that surrounds me all the time. And I'm better. I feel better about my life, and everything's it's easier. I feel more happy. And to a certain degree, I maybe it's not admire, but I certainly can acknowledge, wow, that's a legitimate process or approach to living your life, where you can have some separation from the turmoil or the dystopic future that's impending us outside your door is tomorrow morning. And my outlook for that is, yes, you are protecting your mental health, but there's another aspect of it is that you're ignoring the reality of a societal situation that, if it continues to ascend and build and grow or infect or metastasize or cannibalize the consciousness or the conscious state of the world, the outcomes of that, as we've already seen in our past, can be catastrophic. And I think that's probably an understatement, which prevents happiness in just about every way, shape, or form. And I think, there's a reason why American culture has absolutely integrated this quest or this pursuit of happiness. I think it's built into American society. Why? Because it's part of our foundation, right? It's part of the way, it's part of the central idea that America was built upon by our founding fathers. And by those who actually exited and left the tyranny of England in the 1600s. They were seeking out a space of existence that they could be segregated from that tyranny, that consummate impending pressure of overreach or the imposition of a particular way of thinking or believing, right? Or the overreach of a government's control in terms of taxation or determining what you could own versus not own, what is the government's or what do you lease? All of those components which drove those pilgrims out of England, I think that's a part of our foundational essence in America. And, obviously everybody recognizes that the Declaration of Independence is the defining document that generated an idea. The challenge, I believe now, is that many of you have either consciously or subconsciously detached yourself from that reference point, that it was the pursuit of happiness. It wasn't the guarantee of happiness, right? Happiness is one of the core 8 emotions, right? It's in there, joy, right? And so, but you have to recognize, like all emotions, it's fleeting. As quick as it comes, it can go. And in particular, if you allow the external world to govern your interpretation or perception of happiness itself. So how do we begin to contextualize that from a historical perspective that roots us back in when it actually meant, what the author Thomas Jefferson actually meant when he scribed that very famous phrase? Now, let's go back to the original, which was part of Thomas Jefferson's, right, Declaration of Independence that he kind of co-authored, if you will. He was the focused author in it, but it did have help from John Adams and others. But it was this iconic sentence that really encapsulates the idea of what the American Revolution, more so the culture of an American society, was built upon. And that's, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, you got to recognize that the conclusion of that was not kind of haphazard, right? It was intentional. Every single word was chosen with specific intention. And what you need to understand is that the intention was not shallow in its aspiration, but it had with it a depth of thinking through Thomas Jefferson, through John Adams, that was much more tangible or viable. Maybe that's not the right word, much more intentional than I think how many of us imagine the phrase itself to mean today, right? The pursuit of happiness. What makes us happy today, right? Well, having a certain level of material things, having a particular financial health, having an opportunity that kind of generates a sense of meaning, whether it's a job or your family, a community, right? These things, that's what it is. But what Thomas Jefferson was trying to encapsulate in this statement was much more sophisticated than I think most people allow themselves to realize, right? This was a deliberate choice that was rooted in Enlightenment philosophy, colonial political thought, in the specific context of the American Revolution itself. All right. Now that's the thing that I think becomes a little bit problematic intellectually or emotionally for people, because this document and that statement as what are our rights is directly correlated to that. Our right are these inalienable rights, but guess what? We're willing to go toe to toe with the greatest empire, arguably in human history, the English Empire, right? The monarchy of England. Remember that back then, the sun never set on the English Empire because of its naval fleet and its colonial ability to overwhelm certain areas around the world that had huge natural resources and trade opportunities. So the context of the pursuit of happiness is built upon the essence of revolution itself. So as you begin to listen to my explanation of what this actually means, think about this stuff that I'm telling you. Allow it to sink in as you're listening to me in your car right now, as you're listening to me while you work out, right? This pursuit of happiness is contextualized by the American Revolution itself. All right. Now, the origins of the phrase are quite interesting, right? When you think about the pursuit of happiness in quotations, it traces back to the confluence of intellectual traditions that shaped our founding fathers' worldview, right? A primary influence at this time of Jefferson was John Locke, right? Whose 1869, the Second Treatise of Government, outlined unalienable rights as life, liberty, and estate, or property. Right. And that was the ability to own your own shit. Right. And that the government or the aristocracy or the imperial, man, once you purchased it or conquered it, man, that was yours and nobody was going to take it for you. And within that sense of ownership, where you could build a structure that gave you enclosure and you could raise a family and carve out in the wilderness, which they literally did, a place for you to just exist and pursue this happiness. Right. So John Locke was huge and a big time admirer of Locke. Jefferson was big time and adapted this triad. But here's the kicker. What did he substitute? He got rid of the estate, or the essence, the pursuit of estate or property, and he put in the pursuit of happiness for property. Now, this phrase, this overall general idea was more closely aligned with George Mason's Virginia Declaration of Rights, adapted on June 12th instead of July 4th, right? Weeks before Jefferson's draft. And then in his, he said, quote, certain inherent rights, namely the enjoyment of life, liberty, and with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety, end quote. So it's interesting. Mason added the other thing, right? He recognized that the initial components, and remember, these go back to Enlightenment thinking on what enables the human soul to have that sensation of strength or conviction or protection of their state of mind, right? Because that's what all this is. It's like, this is what gives you proper mental health. And when you look at what the mental health crisis of what's going on in America, what are the fundamental ideas, right? Physical health has been attacked through overprescription of drugs and pharmaceuticals, the impact of our food, right? Keeping young kids encapsulated indoors for 8 hours a day, infecting them with a particular desire that the only sense of meaning they're going to have is if they go work for some mega corporation, right? That whole thing. So all these things are an affront, right, to what we're doing now or implementing now into our kids and into ourselves was kind of counterintuitive to what these men were talking about. And so Mason included that, right? Now, when Jefferson was working on the Declaration in Philadelphia, he had access to all these thoughts. Like when he's contemplating, he's just not sitting there, in some poetic kind of stream of consciousness state. He's thinking about each word and why it's important and where it comes from him philosophically. Now, Jackson also drew from a ton beyond Locke and Mason, and from Scottish Enlightenment figures like Francis Hutchinson, David Hume, Henry Home, or otherwise known as Lord Kames, and Adam Smith, who all discuss happiness, here it is, as a moral pursuit involving virtue and reason. Now, what's interesting is Lord Kames' writings on moral philosophy influenced Jefferson to frame happiness as the practice of virtue in harmony with natural laws. All right? The practice of virtue. So the idea then immediately should be what comes to the forefront of your consciousness while you listen is, how do I practice virtue? Or even more so, what are virtues to me? Like, what aspect of my life am I engaging in and day out that's virtuous? Right? And then is that practice of virtue harmonious with what the natural environment offers me? And I don't think people are looking at it like that. Whatever the powers that be have stripped us and our consciousness, our philosophical pursuit, away from the correlation of virtue and our integration into the natural environments. Right? Now, what is virtue? Virtue is a moral quality or trait considered to be good or desirable, reflecting ethical excellence and righteousness. It often involves attributes like honesty, courage, compassion, or justice, which guide actions towards the greater good. In philosophy, virtues are habits or dispositions that enable a person to live a morally good life, often balancing extremes, example, Aristotle's golden mean. Different cultures and systems emphasize specific virtues like the cordial virtues, prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance, or in Western thought or Confucian virtues like benevolence or propriety. All right? So when I put in, hey, Grok, give me a list of all the virtues, this is what it pumped out, right? And I want you, in your mind, let's take 30 seconds right now in your head to think of as many virtues as you can, right? While you're sitting there, you got this in your head. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it, all right? Do, 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 do. God, I hated that. All right, think about it. Don't just think, wait for me to say it. Actually come up with at least 3 or 4 virtues and see how many of them you come up with that meet this list. All right, 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, here we go. Jordy, go ahead. Give me your list.
Courage.
Wait, did you look it up? Did you type it in while I was doing that? I saw your little fingers moving over there.
I was not doing that, no.
Okay, good. Then go for it. Let me hear what you came up with.
The dome.
All right, go.
I would say first and foremost, it'd be courage.
Yep.
Honesty.
All right.
Discipline.
Oh, love it. Good.
That's a good place to start.
That's good. All right, yeah. I dig it. That's good. Good job. Those are good ones. All right, here we go. You ready? Mm-hmm. Courage, wisdom, justice, temperance, compassion, honesty, humility, patience, kindness, integrity, gratitude, forgiveness, prudence. It is. Prudence, charity, hope, fortitude, loyalty, respect, diligence, chastity, generosity, peacefulness, and sincerity. All right. How often are you thinking about one of those concepts in depth? How often are you teaching one of your children those concepts on how to manage their behaviors So they're pursuing a particular skill set or idea or relationship with generosity integrated into that, with peacefulness integrated into that, with gratitude, forgiveness, kindness, hope integrated into that pursuit of those activities, right? Because that's what it is. You have these things in our lives that give us fulfillment, educating ourselves, engagement with our peers and friends, engagement with our family members, right? The intimacies in those relationships, the adventure that's out in front of us, right? Because that's a huge part of that pursuit, right? The pursuit of happiness should include the adventure of going to experience new endeavors. But how are you going to do it? What's the formula? What's the structure of your belief systems that I talked about before? Well, these are the words that you should use to formulate these intentions in your life, right? Now, this list covers virtues from various traditions, including those classical cardinals, right? Christian theological virtues, other global ethical systems, right? A wide variety. These are things that the reality is, these are the things that human beings have been fortifying throughout human history, right? From that first moment of that first, revelatory awakening of human consciousness. Whenever that took place, whether it was a singular act, like I believe that at one point there was this immaculate conception of consciousness within a particular being that then began to spread through the evolution of that particular species, Homo sapiens, or whatever came before that, right? And perhaps maybe the consciousness was different in those other groups. I mean, obviously some races and groups out there have Neanderthal DNA in them and all that stuff. But there's a moment, obviously, that took place that was the crossover, where all of a sudden, you're like, oh, whoa, I'm aware, I'm self-conscious, that I can think about thinking, right? That I can plan out, I can concoct a plan that keeps me alive from the natural realities of the world, right? Those things that want to kill me, poison me, the environmental effects that want to erase me, all of these external things. Now, what I can do is there's someone else, there's another being that has that capacity for consciousness too. We can figure out how to interact through whatever means it is to formulate a plan together, which exponentially increases our ability to survive and thrive. Right? So that's how long this is, because what happens? Each iteration of that behavioral component, those tied together actions, generates what? Over time, the more we do things that are iterable for the benefit of our survival, those generate what? A virtue, right? Out of that iterable behavior comes something that we hold true, and that's a virtue. That's one of these virtues. So then what we can do is, if we get our tribe, culture, subculture, societies to all buy in to those iterable virtues, now we have a system that we can emerge to another level and another level and another level. And what we've seen throughout history, or recorded history is that when these societies begin to move away from these core virtues that are integrated into pretty much every existing society or civilization throughout history, which keeps them going, when we move away from those core virtues and implement another line of virtues, or moral relativism, that the individual themselves constructs whatever their virtuous nature is, there's a whole other side of that, which is detrimental towards the continued reciprocal game that's being played, that, oh, if I do it, you'll do it. If we do it together, we survive and thrive. But there's that one person who comes in and says, no, I'm not playing a game. I want what I want. I get what I get. I desire what I desire. I want it at any time. To hell with you. And that breaks up the system. It causes the chaos, which then degrades into violence, evil, destruction, the whole thing, right? So when you start to think about the creation of virtue, right, it really is this goes back to classical antiquity. And when you look at the great thinkers of our time, right, you had Aristotle with his initial concept of eudaimonia, right, or eudaimonia, which is human flourishing through virtuous living, right? And so that's pretty far back, man. I mean, that's old, right? Other people like Cicero, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius with his Stoicism, right? And it's all this lifelong quest for self-improvement and ethical conduct rather than mere pleasure. And I think what's happened is that our society, modern society, as things have gotten easier, right, with supermarkets and Amazon and liquor stores around the corner and whatever else you need to anesthetize yourself from the reality of those who seek ultimate control of your own sovereignty. As you ignore that pursuit of happiness becomes almost a numbing effect. You're seeking to numb yourself from the reality that this is a consummate fight, the pursuit of happiness. It's revolutionary in nature. So one of the guys that I think really had the most impact as I was doing research on this was, if you looked at who Jefferson was deeply into in the 1770s, and that was a person named Cicero, an ancient philosopher. And he wrote this these series of books called the Tusculan Disposition or Disputations, which links happiness to wisdom and tranquility. All right. Wisdom and tranquility. So we've seen happiness connected to the pursuit of living a virtuous life. Now Cicero talks about wisdom and tranquility. So think about what it takes to become wise. Life experience, adventure, multiple failures, relationships, understanding what's good and bad in a relationship. And then through that exposition or that exploration, at the end result of that arduous, path, right? That path of righteousness or salvation, we can find some momentary tranquility that we think we understand the world around us through the lens of these virtues. And that this exercise or this ambition or this combat against mere pleasure, right? That's what begins to give us, now I have a tranquility about my effort, right? Now, when you look at the overview of these 5 books, and I'll go through this pretty quickly, right? What the purpose of these books was, Cicero was aiming to provide practical philosophy for Romans, synthesizing Greek through primarily Stoic and Epicurean and Peripatetic influences to address emotional distress and guide readers towards virtuous and a tranquil life. Now, this dialogue, pretty much he began this in 45 BCE. Right? So that's what I want you to really think about, that human beings have been thinking about what this means, the pursuit of happiness for thousands of years. And it's not like, where we have deep thought is you take a 20-minute break while you're on the shitter from scrolling and you see something in depth by someone you follow and you sit back and you're like, oh, wow, that's heavy. Right. And then 20 minutes later, you're back into the monotony of the material pursuit of happiness. These people would sit around for years. I mean, how many years did Descartes go into the woods? 10 years, that dude tried to figure out his philosophical ideation, right? So when you think about, this, and these are dialogues between Cicero and a narrator, interlocutor, often unnamed, in a Socratic style that he did in his Tusculan villa. All right, the core thesis in this is happiness demands on inner virtue and wisdom, not external circumstances. And tranquility is achieved by mastering emotions and fear through reason. All right, book number 1, and this is fascinating, on the contempt of death, right? And that's overcoming the fear of death to achieve tranquility. Now, this was really what set me forth in my quest to become a Navy SEAL and keep carrying a gun, was that I had this bizarre, unrealistic fear of death, right? I was afraid of it. Like, why? And why was I afraid of it? I think partially because in my childhood, I hadn't experienced any hardship or real trauma or toughness. I grew up in Boca Raton. My dad was an attorney. I, went to great schools. I didn't have any worries at all. And so I moved into this place of pleasure, if you will, intellectually, and didn't want to be challenged. But that didn't get me to, it got me to a point was like when I started to become a man, I had no real concept of what that masculinity or manhood was like, or what the intention behind it, or what I was supposed to do with it, how I was supposed to figure it out. And so, part of his key arguments in this is death is not an evil. It is either annihilation, which is no suffering, or a transition to the afterlife, which is potentially better. Now, I fundamentally believe that my death will open up a space for heaven and the afterlife with Christ. So, but in order to get there, what do I have to do? I have to pursue this revolutionary happiness, this virtual endeavor, this pressure to constantly be righteous in my existence, right? Don't forget that list of virtues, because that's what the pursuit is. And if I do that, then I'll have some what? What will emerge in that? Wisdom. And that's understanding death's inevitability and irrelevance to happiness, drawing on Stoic and Platonic ideas, right? Certainly, I understand the pursuit and the presence of death. If you exist within special operations, the whole thing is a death culture, right? Everything surrounds the eventual confrontation between a warrior or terrorist or evil, good and evil, however you want to look at it. It's that pursuit of confronting the thing that ultimately will destroy the pursuit of happiness for my tribe, right? So, he also refutes fears by arguing the soul's immorality, and that's from Plato, or alternatively, the non-existence is not to be feared, which is the Epicurean view. Now, in linking this to happening, fear of death disrupts tranquility. Wisdom dispels this fear, enabling a calm life focused on virtue. So if you pursue this virtuous life, right, depending upon where you look at it, if you're a Christian or have faith in the afterlife, man, you're going to do the things that you need to do that you'll be welcomed into eternal existence. And for me, through my Christianity, right? And the other is, if it is annihilation, that's it, it's over, it's done. You've pursued this thing, this reward of being virtuous to the people you care most about, and to give that presence, which creates what? Tranquility in the chaos that is otherwise life itself. All right, the second book was on enduring pain. And he says the theme of this is pain is not an insurmountable evil and can be endured through mental strength. His key arguments: pain is a body sensation, but its perception is magnified by the mind's weakness. Now, I pitch this all the time. This is a core understanding of all of the frog logic concepts, right? Pain is an inevitability. Suffering and pain are imbued in life no matter what you want. Even if the existence of knowing you're going to die, that's going to infuse pain. But as you see others suffer around you, from drug addictions, overdoses, through bad health, mental health, trauma, abuse, neglect, all these things that seem to be a component of those who lack the ability to pursue happiness or virtuousness and only seek pleasure, right? Or don't push themselves to develop that the armor of virtuousness or righteousness, if you will, right? What happens? That pain overwhelms them, and then they lack discipline and they lack this tranquility, and so that infects the or environments around them. So pain is a part of it. It's how you perceive it. So I always talk, when I talk to the teams that I work with, man, part of your training should be implementing positive pain. That's what they did to us in the SEAL program, right? It was the application of positive pain that drive the evolution of our team life or our culture, our team culture. And that team culture was built on the willingness to sacrifice for those you love most, to accept the harsh pain of existence on the battlefield as a component of the virtuousness that makes us strong together. And that brings our happiness. That's the happiness they're talking about. Book 3 talks about grief and emotional distress. All right. Now, alleviating grief and emotional disturbances is very difficult because it's imbued. Emotions like grief arrive from false beliefs about the importance of external goods like wealth, status, whatever it might be. And so often we grieve in that part, right? We have emotional distress because we don't feel like we have enough. We don't rate against our neighbors. Hell, I live in a place that's completely inundated with high net worth people. I'm surrounded by it. Even my job is all about high net worth people. And so I'm constantly bearing witness to that as the arbitrator of happiness. If you can retire at 55, you've got a lake house and all this other stuff. And that's the aspiration of happiness, which distorts what? The pursuit of happiness that's based on what Jefferson is trying to implement through all these other people, right? So get in touch with that understanding, right? That, rational self-control and philosophical reflection, that helps you overcome the distress of all these other ideas or material ideas that distract you from pursuing this virtuous philosophy, right? All right. Then book number 4 on other emotional disturbances, right? And this is managing all your passions, right? Fear, anger, desires to achieve what he calls a balanced soul. Now, this has been a huge part of the self-help movement, which really, I think, emerged in the late 1960s and in a way that it is today, right? Through humanistic psychology and all of what now is positive psychology and all these other things, right? The pursuit of this happy state, right? And that's what, YOLO and all these other ideas like that have emerged in our social consciousness, right? Right? Because emotions are disorders caused by irrational judgments. And that's per the Stoic doctrine. What I see is young people who are in this emotional distress, that they don't have safe spaces. The words are violence, all this crap that's just permeating across so many different levels of our society and demographics and age groups. It's ridiculous. Since when in human history has this been a reality? And it's not. And what it is, it's a hyper need to protect themselves against what? The harshness of life itself. And you can't continue to create safe spaces. It's just an impossibility. There's no such thing as a safe space. And it's an illusion that people who want to manipulate other people have created for them to believe. There is no safe space, right? There's no safe space in your own mind. The contemplation of your meaning or value, that pursuit of virtuousness, that's pressure. That can cause emotional distress if you don't have something to aim at, something to focus on, right? And that whole thing, right? Wisdom as rational control of passions creates a tranquil mind, right? It's the essential for lasting happiness. Now, people want to imagine, again, this thing is about, right, if I can feel happy, if I feel that sense of elation, then that's my pursuit. That's an illusion. Happiness comes from the fact that when you're in the storm of life, your boat, your ship, your proverbial metaphorical ship of your mind the mast doesn't crack. And if it does, you don't freak out, or you don't lose your rudder. And if it does, you don't freak out, or the hull cracks and you don't freak out, or you go into water on your whatever, you don't freak out. You can maintain the sense of what? The pursuit of happiness, right? The pursuit of those virtues, that control. Everything is not the end. Everything is not dystopia incarnate. The world, the sky isn't falling every frickin' minute. Why? Because you have the wisdom to recognize, that which does not kill you only makes you stronger. Quote a little Nietzsche. And the last book is on the sufficiency of virtue for happiness. Virtue alone is sufficient for a happy life, he says, regardless of external circumstances. He defends the Stoic view that virtue, wisdom, justice, courage, temperance, is the sole good, ensuring happiness even in its adversity. He engages with other schools, the Epicureans, who prioritize pleasure, and Peripatetics, who include external goods in happiness, which is, as we know, a distraction from that pursuit, right? If I have this Rolex watch, I'm happy. If I own this home, I'm happy. If I have the top paying job, I'm happy. And that's what gets us distracted. And that's what this whole thing has been conjured and what it's done, right? And now, because we have so much access to information and there's so many choices to pursue, people are overwhelmed because they're not focused on those virtues to guide them in their ambitions, right? All right. I think as you go through, Cicero actually argues that happiness is attainable through wisdom and virtue, which enable tranquility by freeing the mind from fear, pain, and emotional disturbance. Each book addresses a specific obstacle to happiness, offering philosophical tools to overcome it. Again, if you want to understand the length of which, go back, read some Cicero. Read some Marcus Aurelius, read some Plato, Socrates. And it's not to adapt their genuine nature of philosophical ideas, but it's to understand that this is a journey that humans have not stopped. There has not been an interruption in this pursuit since the dawn of our consciousness. So what are you doing with your consciousness? Are you pursuing this happiness? When you go back in and you really look at why Jefferson incorporated this instead of the property clause as the ultimate idea in that, it was intentional and multifaceted. I think what he says is, while Locke focused on material estate as a right, colonial documents like Mason's treated property and happiness as separate. Property involved acquisition and possession, while happiness encompassed broader flourishing. The distinction avoided equating rights solely with ownership, which could have implications with the whole slavery thing at the time, right? And I think Jefferson was a parent, even though he was a slave owner, sleeping with one of his slaves, having children with one of his slaves. He was aware of that distinction that needed to be made, that it was not about the possession of property and more about the possession of this happiness or virtue as that which will make human beings, amidst the grandeur of suffering and pain, that will give them that sensation that their life has meaning. Therefore, they're actively participating in the pursuit of good deeds, of being good men and women. This made it more aspirational and inclusive, appealing to a diverse colonial audience seeking justification for independence. Again, I go back to that revolutionary spirit, right? And that revolutionary spirit is what should be, I know it's taking place in many of you. I know you're having that. I think there are many people that are fomenting this aggression against each other at pretty high degree right now. And that's what, whatever the opposite side is, whatever the anarchists or the communists or the Marxists or the socialists or whatever want. They want to tear down the framework of virtue within us, that pursuit. What they say is, you'll be happy when you own nothing and you'll like it. That's what it is. We will give you everything you need to be happy, which is essentially anesthetizing or impeding or muting or cutting out the very things inside you philosophically that are driving you to become the person you've always wanted to be, which is righteous in a place where salvation will accept you because you've been virtuous. And you have healthy relationships, and you have deep meaning because you sacrifice yourself for your tribe, your clan, your culture, your subsect of society, your communities, your churches. Right? That's giving you that deeper sense of purpose. You know, when you think about that list of virtues, this has been incorporated throughout time. I mean, you know, one of the great thinkers of that time also was Benjamin Franklin, you know, and you know, he had these 13 lists of virtues that if you adhered to them, you would have this sensation of happiness in you. It would give you that tranquility or that wisdom. It would give you that sense of righteousness and being. And so these were his, right? Temperance, eat and drink in moderation, avoid excess. Silence, speak only what benefits others or yourself. Avoid idle chatter. Order, keep things organized. Let each item have its place. Resolution, stick to your decisions and goals. Frugality, spend money wisely only on what's worthwhile. Interesting that he was one of the foundation of our government, right? And what are we right now? $38 trillion in debt. I guess they've thrown frugality out the window. And what's going to happen as a result? Chaos, right? Industry, stay productive. Don't waste time on trivialities. What's your screen time right now? Look it up today while you listen to this. After I finish, get on what's your screen time for the last 3 weeks. What could you have been doing productive in that time about fortifying your virtues? Sincerity, be honest and fair, avoid deceit. I mean, lying is the serpentine of all societies, corruption, right? Justice, don't harm others, do what's right. Moderation, avoid extremes, keep a balanced approach. Cleanliness, maintain personal and environmental hygiene. Tranquility, stay calm, don't sweat the small stuff. Chastity, practice restraint in sexual matters. Man, that goes all the way back to Sodom and Gomorrah. And look at what we're seeing right now. Look at where we're seeing the aggressive violence emerge out of certain communities that are absolutely going after prudence or chastity, if you will, and those concepts. Humility, imitate Jesus and Socrates, be modest. You know, when you think about Jefferson's intent and reasons for including this, right? He never explicitly explained the phrase, but its survival through the edits by John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and the Committee of Five in Congress indicate on its meaning. This is what I want you to pay close attention to. He intended it to underscore that Britain's tyranny violated natural rights, justifying revolution. By including it, the Declaration framed independence as a moral imperative for enabling human potential, linking personal virtue to republican governance. Personal virtue to republican governance, not democratic governments. And I'm not talking about in terms of our political parties. Both political parties, in my opinion, have been sacrificing the pursuit of virtue at a very high degree in order for as long as I can remember paying attention to politics, right? Whether you want to go back to Iran-Contra, whether you want to go back to taking us off the gold standard or the induction of the Fed and income tax. I mean, hell, we went to war for 2 to 3% sales tax on tea. Well, how much you paying in taxes now, right? or a war on traditional family values, or the war in Iraq, or unconditioned bombing against American civilians overseas, or whatever it is, our own the Patriot Act and our own violation of our own liberties. Can you imagine what our founding fathers would say if they were to be able to look at what we've concocted for ourselves and these distractions towards the pursuit of these virtues that were at the base revolutionary in nature? You know, this is not just some effete, elite, land-owning person that just was like, oh, I'll just throw this out. It sounds so poetic. My prose are significant. No, these were people that were breaking with the most powerful organization in the world, and their lives were in danger. Every one of those people who concocted, in particular, Thomas Jefferson, would have been hung in public squares for writing these words. You have to let that sink in, because you have to understand that's what was at stake. When people no longer adhered to the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of virtue, the pursuit of wisdom and tranquility, the pursuit of a structure of salvation and righteousness, right? Based on these God-given inalienable rights. When we stop doing those things, then what happens? We get to a place like we're at right now. We get to a place where we're unsure of what's going to happen tomorrow. So my ask of you as we wrap this up is to pursue those virtues. Pick 2 or 3 or 1 a month for the next year and focus on those virtues. In fact, what we're going to do, Jordy and I are going to put out a little challenge on the Frog Logic Institute, a little 1-month challenge, all right? Actually, we're going to take each virtue and we're going to build those out for 1 per week for however many weeks. And we're going to give you a little assignment for that. All right. So we'll let you know when that's up and out for that little virtue challenge, because what I think we all need to do more of is not be fixated on the material items or the feeling of ignorance that's going to give us this symbiotic or utopic state of existence, because it's just not the way life works. It's just not reality. And so what we want you to do, what I want you to do, is I want you to get focused on the pursuit of happiness by redefining the virtues that make you feel good. And they might be painful, but I'm telling you, there's a revolution in your heart that needs to take place in your pursuit of your faith and your belief systems and what this great country represents. Booyah.